You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Welcome back to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that is not your history class. With me, your overly enthusiastic host, Katie Charlwood, true crime enthusiast and reader of books. Welcome one and all. Welcome back. How has everyone's week been? So as some of you may know, I have an issue with Stockholm Syndrome. So there's a few things that are sort of weirdly in popular culture and generally accepted as, somebody's chewing their words today, generally accepted within society, even though we have not really much of a basis for it. It's kind of like, you know how we see patterns that aren't there because our brain is designed to see patterns. Babies are designed to recognize human faces. Like, that's their thing. So I think as well that correlation does not equal causation is very much a part of this, but I feel strongly about this. Stockholm Syndrome is a fallacy. It's not real, and I believe that many of the very real conditions are often lumped in and swept under this Stockholm Syndrome umbrella, even though they either exist in their own right or do not necessarily belong there, like trauma bonding, IPV, PTSD, conditioning, so on and so forth. You know, they're all different things, but for some reason they're consistently lumped onto this umbrella. Now, so I thought what I talk about today is, surprisingly enough, I've already talked about this on TikTok, but I'm going to go into greater depth and tell you about the origins of Stockholm Syndrome, otherwise known as forgive me, Swedish people, for my terrible pronunciations, the Norrmalmstorg robbery. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, sources. So, y'all love my sources. So I listened to the Memory Motel podcast, the criminal podcast. The Memory Motel podcast had an interview with one of the hostages. The criminal podcast was great. There was also a History.com article by Christian Klein from 2019. There was a Smithsonian article. I don't remember where that was from. There was the bank drama from the New Yorker from 1975. That was an interesting one. And Jan Erik Olsson, he also wrote a book called Stockholm Syndrome. So Stockholm Syndrome, effectively. And he released that in 2009. Okay. And I read an article from 2013 called 40 år sedan dramat vid Normalstorg. 40 years after the Normalstorg robbery. I watched a video called 40 år sedan dramat vid Normalstorg. 40 years after the Normalstorg robbery. And I got my brother to translate it because my brother lives in Sweden. Anyway, those are my sources. Okay, let's get into this. So yes, first of all, Stockholm Syndrome was actually named after an event that happened in Stockholm I know a lot of people, I didn't know that. A lot of people didn't know that. I discovered. But yeah, so we're going to go back to the 70s. So it's the 23rd of August, 1973. And the Sveriges Kreditbanken is, doing its banking stuff. It's in the fancy part of Normalmstorg. God, I'm going to ruin these pronunciations. And in walks, and a masked man enters the bank, pulls a loaded submachine gun, fires at the ceiling, and disguises his voice to sound like an American person, and shouts in English, "The party has just begun." So, who is this criminal, you ask? Well, it is none other than Jan Erik Olsen, a safecracker who was on furlough from prison and just didn't return because he was serving a 3-year sentence for grand larceny. Hooray! So Olsen, what Olsen doesn't know is that a silent alarm has been triggered. And because of that, 2 police officers respond. As a result of this, he ends up shooting at one, hitting him in the hand, and the other has to sit in a chair singing a song. Honestly, okay. And so he takes 4 people hostage and then sends, gets everyone out the bank. What I think is really funny, I love this little part, is that before he sends everyone out the bank, apart from obviously his 4 hostages, there's, just a dude there with his wife, and he's like, my wife needs her medication. And so Olsen goes and gets it for him and gives it to him for the wife. That's... I find it's such a juxtaposition from the man who came in and just shot the place. And he's like, oh, but here's your medicine. Of course, have a good day now. What? Okay. So once he has his hostages secure, Olsen asks for his friend, Clark Olofsson, to be brought there. He was his prison roommate, who he had previously tried to help escape. He was waiting outside in the car, and dynamite had been smuggled in. But Olofsson he failed to detonate the dynamite for whatever reason, so that didn't work. But anyway, this did. So he demands that Olofsson gets brought there, 3 million Swedish kroner, 2 guns, bulletproof vests, helmets, and a blue Ford Mustang. And this is for the release of the hostages. I'm going to apologise for mispronouncing names, but the 4 hostages were Kristen Enmark, Birgitta Lundblad, Elizabeth Oldgren, and the only male hostage, Sven Safstrom. So Olofsson was a bit different to Olsen. So Jan Erik Olsen, as opposed to Clark Olofsson. Clark Olofsson was more of a violent criminal. He'd done armed robberies. It was, his crimes tend to be a bit more violent, whereas Olsen was, a safecracker. So they bring Olofsson in, and he's to be used as a communication link with the police negotiators. One of whom is psychologist. So this psychiatrist, Niels Bejerot, Bejerot, I don't know how to pronounce it. He was the psychiatrist that was actually leading the police response. But we're gonna get back to him. So Jan Erik Olsen, he's in the bank. He's got Olofsson. He's got his 4 hostages, and so this siege lasts over 6 days, and this becomes basically this huge blockbuster media event. The Swedish people had never seen anything like it. The police had never dealt with anything like it. And for many parts of the world, this is something they had never seen. The thing is with the police is, I'm fairly certain that the police and Mr. Bejerot there had no training in hostage negotiations. Initially, they actually misidentify Jan Erik Olsen they think they found his younger brother, and they send in this teenage boy to negotiate, accompanied by the psychiatrist Niels Bejerot, only to have Olsen shoot at him. And Olsen and Olofsson, they are agitated, clearly. And what they did was, so Clark Olofsson, he says to the hostages, listen, effectively, Jan's not going to hurt you. This isn't his thing. They've just put this random dude in. Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. And one of the hostages actually said about it later that it's not that she felt safe, but she believed him, and that he had more consideration for her safety than this man who brought in this random teenager, this child, into a dangerous hostage situation. So, Kristen Enmark, she asks to speak to Bejerot, and he straight up refuses to talk to her. Like, he goes in to do a negotiation and refuses to speak to the hostages which are there. Olsen and Olofsson, they are barricaded. They're barricaded in the inner main vault, which is where they've kept the hostages. And they're negotiating, and the negotiators agree that they can have a car to escape, but they won't allow them to take the hostages with them if they try to leave. And this is where the standoff actually starts. And the police bring in a phone so the hostages and their captors, they can communicate with the outside world. Brigitte Lundblad, when she can't reach her family, they tell her, try again, don't give up, they'll get through to you. Don't worry, keep trying. And Elizabeth Oldgren, she complains of claustrophobia. So Olsen, it basically attaches a 30-foot rope to her and, lets her leave the vault and walk around because she's claustrophobic. And Kristen Enmark has bad dreams. She's shivering. The only male hostage, Sven Safstrom, says that Olsen was really benevolent and that he treated them really, really well. So by day 2, the hostages and the captors are all on a first name basis. And at this point, they're getting getting really antsy with the police and the negotiators and everything that's kind of happening there. Because considering everything so far that's happened, they're being treated pretty well, for hostages. So basically, nothing is happening. People are freaking out and they're like, okay. And at this point, it's starting to get so, it's on all the newspapers, it's everywhere, it's on the TV. And so people start contacting the police headquarters and they're like, how we can end this standoff. And they're like, we can have a religious concert by the Salvation Army band. We can send in a swarm of angry bees. Not the bees. What? Who would? Okay. I love it. It makes me laugh so much. Anyway. So basically, the hostages start to think that the government is just playing with their lives because they're not really doing anything. So there's basically a live radio interview happens from the bank, and Kristen Enmark just gets mad. She's like, the government and the police are playing with our lives and they don't even want to talk to me. Direct quote, who is the one who will die if anything happens? So the hostages felt that their likelihood of survival was just getting smaller and smaller, the longer this was going on. So what she does is she's like, okay, I'm going to sort this out. Because I love this. I love it. She's a hostage and she's like, I'm going to sort this. She calls the Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme. And she literally begs him to let her and another hostage leave the bank with their captors. She's like, I trust them. They haven't hurt us. They've been quite nice. But I'm really afraid that the police will attack us and we will die. But the Prime Minister, Palm, just straight up refuses and says no. They're not going to give in to the demands of They're not going to give in to the demands of criminals. Also, additionally, furthermore, Palm said that she couldn't get out the bank and that she would have to be happy and find some solace that she died at her post. To which she responds, I don't want to be a dead hero. And at this point, the Prime Minister, he's like, the elections are coming up and the King Gustav VI is like very close to death. And he's like, nah. So then on the 28th of August, after 6.5 days, basically over 130 hours, the police drill a hole into the vault, take a photo, which is the one, if you've seen Stockholm Syndrome, that's generally the photo they use, and they pump tear gas into the vault. And you know what's funny is that Clark Olofsson actually grabbed one of the hostages, pointed a gun at them and said, if you gas us, I will shoot the hostages. And the police did it anyway. Yeah, so there's tear gas in the vault and Jan Erik Olsson and Clark Olofsson, they surrender and the police are like, the hostages have to come out first. And then all 4 hostages are like, nope. They're going to go first because you'll just gun them down. You'll shoot them if you go out. We're going to follow. So they're in the doorway of the vault. The hostages and the captors are like, they hug, they kiss, they shake hands, and the police grab they grab the 2 guys, and 2 of the female hostages are crying. They're like, don't hurt them, they didn't harm us. And so basically the police are parading, down the street with the captors. And Enmark is just madder at this point. And she's like, no. So she's told to lie on the stretcher and she's like, I walked in here 6.5 days ago. I'm walking out. But they make her go on the stretcher anyway. And as she's wheeled away, she shouts, Clark, I will see you again. Effectively, the police, they're like, this is weird. The police are like, hold the phone. What the fuck is this? Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
The regular season is heating up. New stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half in the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
What is going on? And they find it very strange that these, that the hostages and the captors are jovial and pleasant one another. They can't understand this connection they have. The public don't understand it, the police don't understand it, and to the point that they actually investigate Kirsten Enmark to see if she plotted the robbery with Olsen and Olofsson. So, and because of all this, confusion that was being pushed around and pummeled at everybody, Elizabeth Ogren, she says, she's speaking to a psychiatrist, and she's like, is there something wrong with me? Why don't I hate them? The trial happens. And so again, Enmark is, Kristen is criticising the police, and she singles out this Bejerot dude again. And in response, and yet again, without speaking to her, he dismisses her comments as the product of a syndrome that he pulls out of his arse. Normalmstorg syndrome, which obviously gets changed to Stockholm Syndrome because, one, it is easier to say, and who doesn't love alliteration? He states that the fear that she felt towards the police was irrational, and it was caused by the emotional or sexual attachment she had with her captors. And this blows up because they're like, the press and the media, they're already suspicious, like I said before, and they think it's weird that she's not as traumatized as they want her to be. At one point, a journalist says it's hard to admit that she's fresh and alert, because apparently having clarity is proof that someone is sick, is suffering from some form of mental illness and attraction and toxic attraction. So she gets interviewed later on, and she goes, and they're asked, explain yourself. And she's like, yeah, I was afraid of the police. Why is that strange? Why is it strange that I'm afraid, of people who are in parks, on roofs, behind corners? They're in armoured vests, they're wearing helmets, they have weapons, and they are ready to shoot. Why is it strange that I'm afraid of that? So the aftermath of the robbery. Both Olsen and Olofsson, they're charged, they're convicted, and so Clark Olofsson claims that, he hadn't helped Olsen. He'd only tried to save the hostages by keeping the situation calm. And the Olofsson, basically when he actually gets out of jail, he meets Kristen Enmark and their families become friends, and then he goes back to a life of crime. But Olsen is sentenced to 10 years in prison, and he receives many letters from women who found him attractive, and he ends up getting engaged to a woman who's who was not one of the former hostages, which has been rumored. He gets married and he moves to Thailand. But yeah, so after he's released, he's it alleged that he commits more crimes, financial crimes. And he turns himself in to the police in 2006, and they're like, no. So yeah, Olsen, he moves to Thailand with his wife and his son, and then moves back to Sweden in 2013. So, like, when they were in Thailand, they ran a supermarket. And then when he goes back to Sweden, he ends up having, like, a garage, like a repair shop for cars. And, like, now he's retired. And he ends up, like, apologising for his actions, for, the crime and stuff. And he does this, and he actually apologises for, like, the whole hostage situation. So, like, I don't know, I kind of think that the heist was what the plan was, but the hostage situation, like, was not an intentional part of that. Like, he thought, I'll go in, I'll get the money, and I will fuck off, right? Genuinely think that was that. So here's the thing, the syndrome, Normalmstorg syndrome, basically, it's coined by himself, and they kind of leave it alone. So basically, Niles Bejerot, that arsehole, with the Normalmstorg syndrome, he coins it without bothering to even ask any of the hostages why. Which is kind of like an integral part of a case study, but that's neither here nor there. He ends up, and then it's not really huge. People don't really think about it. And then, like, later it turns into Stockholm Syndrome. And effectively, so Stockholm Syndrome doesn't really come into wide use until the newspaper heiress Patty Hearst is kidnapped, which we will talk about at a later date. And the thing is that Stockholm Syndrome is basically this cultural term and is used casually by psychologists, but it has no diagnosis. And in general, mental health experts do not recognise Stockholm Syndrome as, like, an official mental health disorder. Stockholm Syndrome is not a recognised psychological diagnosis. There is no validated diagnostic criteria for Stockholm Syndrome. And that most diagnoses of Stockholm Syndrome are made by the media, not psychologists, not psychiatrists, and that there's such little academic research on it, so when mental health experts actually reviewed, the literature on Stockholm Syndrome, they could not agree on how to diagnose it. And effectively, Stockholm Syndrome is a myth invented to discredit women victims of violence by a psychiatrist, Niles Bejerot, with an obvious conflict of interest, whose first instinct was to silence the women questioning his authority. It's just, Anyway. So there we go. That is the origin of Stockholm Syndrome, why it's false, and yeah. Okay, so what did we learn today? We learned that a petty psychiatrist is the reason that the cultural term Stockholm Syndrome exists, and that sometimes authority figures, the people who are meant to be protecting us, aren't, which is super fun. What have we learned? That sometimes men in authority are really fucking petty. But yeah, so I would absolutely suggest, for more information, I would absolutely suggest listening to one of the podcasts. They have great interviews. Recommend. Okay, yes, wow. Cults. I love cults, they're fascinating. I am about to watch The Vow. I am very excited because I've heard it's awful. And I am gonna have a lie down because I am not feeling well. I am very excited. Oh, I ordered a bunch of books. I'm very new with me. I ordered a bunch of history books because I'm that person. I get a few history books, and so I ordered myself some books because I like a physical book. I ordered myself some books because I've tried ebooks and I find them just a little bit more difficult to deal with. Maybe it's the ADHD. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm not keen on it, to be honest. So what I've been doing is a couple of books, but then I got really mad because I've been trying to get this book called Hood Feminism: Notes from the Women that the Movement Forgot by Mickey Kendall, and it is. I want it so bad. Like, this is the thing I love, especially I made a conscious decision to try and to read more stories from, first of all, women stories. Also stories. I do read. I don't know the last time I read a book that was fiction though. Oh, I don't think I haven't really read fiction in a while. I generally read non-fiction, history, true crime, stuff like that. So I've been trying to get Hood Feminism: Notes from the Women that the Movement Forgot, because I've been trying to get more to ensure that I have a wider perspective on the world. So, I'm trying to get from people of colour, from more women, instead of continuously buying books from the straight white man, which is just because, LGBTQ authors, trying to gain different perspectives. So that's what I am. Oh, so yeah, I've ordered a bunch of books and I will let you know if they're good. So, I've been watching, what have I been watching? I've been watching WandaVision. I'm very much here for WandaVision. I am so excited. I've been on TikTok. I'm really enjoying WandaVision. That's my current thing. But I'm about to start watching The Vow, so we'll see if that's any good. That's based on the Nixium cult. I don't remember. So yeah, I will learn how to pronounce it after I watch it. So yeah, you can, if you want to send anything to me, I'm on Twitter at whodidwhatnowpd. I'm on Instagram as whodidwhatnowpod. I am on TikTok as whodidwhatnowpod. And you can always email me at whodidwhatnowpod@gmail.com if there's anything you want me to cover specifically, whether it's my history in 60 seconds or less on TikTok, or whether you want something you feel like should be spoken about here on the podcast or on Instagram or anything like that. Absolutely 100%. I will hear you. Abso-fucking-lutely. But anyway, I have to go clean out my house tomorrow because I had to move house. I had to move back home. And with that, I shall bid you farewell. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Goodbye.